everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are continuing to learn about how to filter out the voice of other people's ideas that we've absorbed. The reason we want to learn how to do this is so that we can accurately hear what God's Spirit is speaking to us. Remember what Colossians 2:8 says? Don't let anyone capture you with empty philosophies or high-sounding nonsense that come from human thinking and the spiritual powers of this world rather than from Christ. The more time we spend with people, especially people that we care about, the more we begin to think like they think. I hope you have been practicing listening for God's voice to speak to you, like we talked about in the first video. As you've been practicing listening for God's voice, maybe this has happened to you. So you're sitting there and you've asked God a question, or you're asking Him to speak to you about a situation, and you've been sitting there a while and you haven't heard anything yet. So all of a sudden, your mind starts trying to figure out what God might potentially say. You start like filling in the blanks. I know I've done that. It's definitely a temptation, even now, for me when I'm listening for God's voice and I don't hear anything for a while, to try to let my mind fill in the blanks and say, I think God would say this. We need to be aware that sometimes we think the way we think because of the people that we spend the most time with and the way they think. Human mindsets rub off on us, and human mindsets, they can be a little bit off. They don't always line up with God's Word. Sometimes a human mindset perspective is a little skewed. Here are some examples. Sometimes we've absorbed the way our families think. Okay, here's my assignment for you today. Without being critical or blaming people, try to identify some different quirky ways that your family thinks. I'll be open with you guys to an extent. So my husband Paul and I, we're a family unit now that we're married. Sometimes we can tend to have this mindset. Sometimes we think a bit perfectionistic. Sometimes our family mindset can be so perfectionistic that we correct one another to a fault, like picking at each other, or we can push ourselves to work really hard on something until we feel that it's absolutely perfect. Perfectionism is a human mindset or a family mindset that Paul and I, and maybe someday our kids, we are going to have to learn to filter out as we listen for God's voice. Because if we don't, we may filter out God's voice like this. Picture this. It's very late at night and I've been up since 6 a.m. I'm working on my notes for my next YouTube video, and I'm studying and I'm figuring out the way I want to phrase certain things, and I'm finding the references to the scriptures I'm using in the video, and suddenly I hear the still quiet voice of God in my heart, and I hear Him say this: Anna, you need to rest. Go to bed and I will help you with this tomorrow. If I don't filter out my perfectionistic family mindset that says, keep pushing, get it done, persevere, make it perfect, then I may be like, I rebuke that. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and I won't grow weary in well-doing. This is where I need to filter out my family mindset. And this is also where I need to look at the whole counsel of God's Word. You know that Hebrews 4, among a lot of other scriptures, is a mandate from God for us to rest from our labors. Yes, it's a passage and it's talking about receiving rest from being saved by Jesus instead of being under the burden of the law. But it also contains principles of resting from our labor. Let's read verses 10 and 11. For all who have entered into God's rest have rested from their labors, just as God did after creating the world. So let us do our best to enter into that rest. But if we disobey God, as the people of Israel did, we will fall. Do you see how family mindsets are incomplete if we don't align them with the whole counsel of God's Word? Yes, diligence and excellence and faithfulness and perseverance, those are all principles we find in the Bible. But Hebrews 4 also has a principle about rest. And think back on that story I was telling you earlier. When it was late at night and I was working on something that was good, but God spoke to my heart and said, Anna, you need to rest, go to bed, I'll help you with this tomorrow. He did that because He cared about me. And if I let a family mindset guide me against His words, if I ignored the whole counsel of God's Word and just picked scriptures that backed up my own perfectionistic tendency, my mindset, I would be disobeying God. So again, here's my question for you today. I want you to think about this. What are some mindsets? Mindsets from your family, or they might come from your political party or your favorite teacher or social activist or celebrity. But what are some of those mindsets that you know you need to recognize and filter out so that you can listen for God's voice inside your heart and mind and hear Him accurately? Ask God to show those mindsets to you, to reveal any blind spots you may have in your life. And then when He shows you those mindsets, ask Him to help you to filter them out. Okay, you guys have an awesome Easter tomorrow. I will see you guys next week on Thursday. Have an awesome weekend and holiday and all that good stuff. So, see you then. Bye. I love podcasts and sermons, and I like to read books by Christian authors that I really look up to. But when I'm reading or listening to them, I make an effort to try to filter what I'm hearing and not be hard on that person, but just realize they're a human like I'm a human, and sometimes they communicate unclearly, or they leave something out, or accidentally add something in, and I don't want to absorb that into the way I think and into the way I listen for God's voice.